Hi, welcome to the Culture Curators Podcast. We're here to share insights, information, and resources to help you become a more effective salon and business leader. Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about suite ownership. We're going to be talking about some myths, some things that people anticipate they're going to have that they maybe don't have, some things that they have that they didn't anticipate having. So we're really going to dive into what is it all about to be a suite owner, and is suite ownership for you or not?
Yeah, I think just like our other episode when we talked about debunking salon myths, I think it's really important to debunk some myths that a lot of people go into in suite ownership because it's very romanticized throughout the industry right now. It might feel like, it's just a natural next step for you to do if you're a stylist that has climbed the top of the mountain in the place that you're in, whether you're a renter somewhere booth wise or whether you're a top level commission person.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest things that we need to talk about, the elephant in the room, so to speak, that's how we approach it in coaching, the coaching world. That's what we name it, the elephant in the room, is that you're going to make so much more money than you did as a commissioned employee. And the reality is, you may make more money, you may bring more money in, but you have now a lot of expenses that money has to go out for. So when your employer was paying for all of the products and was paying for part of your taxes and part of your vacation fund and anything and everything else that goes along with it, the phone, the POS system, your website, all of those things, now you have to start paying for that. Is there money to be made in suite ownership? Of course there is. That would be foolish of us to say no, there isn't. But the profitability margin is relatively the same as when you work as an employed person.
Well, I think it totally also depends on what your client load is, right? Because
Absolutely.
right now and nowadays, so many people are running to open up a suite so soon in their tenure that,
Mhm.
like, have you booked X amount of, and I don't want to start like throwing a certain, it has to be X amount of dollars that you've booked in a week, but I've seen people move on and open up suites where they don't even have a full client load. They're not at 80, 90% booked. They're not busy enough yet for it to sustain completely. And that could be a huge mistake. Opening up a suite could be at the wrong time, could be one of the worst mistakes you make for yourself because, as Jill mentioned, it's not just supplies or other support staff or having the building that's already, if the owner of your former commission salon maybe owns the building or pays the rent on it, obviously, all those things are built in. So you just show up to work, you do your job, and you go home. Well, now there's so many other things that are associated with it. What about marketing? How are you feeding yourself? How are you growing? If you don't have a very clear idea of how you're going to continually get new clients, how is that happening on a regular basis? Now that you have rent to pay, now that you have all your color supplies, now that you have everything else that's associated, right? And we didn't even talk about if there's a retirement package or plan that,
Right.
was being provided.
All the benefits, right?
Yeah, do you stop doing that or do you now start continuing that and now you're the one that has to match yourself every payroll cycle?
Right, right. One of the things that we have seen quite a bit, it's not necessarily debunking a myth, but it's something that I see happen, that we see happen quite a bit, is when a commissioned employee leaves their business and they go to open up a suite, oftentimes we'll see them actually lower their prices.
More often than not.
There's fear involved. They want to make sure that the clients come with them, so they're thinking in their minds, oh my gosh, if I want them to come with, maybe if I lower my prices, it will entice them to come more. And the reality is, you've just done yourself an injustice because they were paying that price. They were happy to pay that price for that experience, for the service that you provided. And so if you're going into suite ownership and you're new, I'm going to encourage you to hang on to your prices, because if you're doing it the right way, your supply and your demand tell you that you should keep your prices as
Yeah,
is.
and I want to break that down for a second because I want to help you understand if you're listening to this and you've either done that or you're thinking about going to a suite and you're thinking about lowering your prices, how, I'll be real, how foolish that is. Okay. So if you have a certain level of clients, like Jill said, that are already used to paying a certain price, they're not expecting all of a sudden to get a 20% discount when you go open up your own business. If anything, a lot of times when a new business is opened, there's a price increase. Now, I'm not telling you you have to do that, but that does happen often, especially for other, if there was a build out. Obviously, a lot of
Sure.
times a price increase is built in. But the other thing too is, if you've now determined to yourself that you moving on to a suite is going to bring you in more income, but you've demoted your prices by 10 to 20%, or even, God forbid, more than that, how is that? That math ain't mathin'. It's just not. You know what I mean? Those numbers don't make sense. So the other thing, this is a really important thing. A lot of times when you're in the correct commission-based salon, there is a structure for how you've raised your prices. And it's a consistent way that's done. And more than likely, you've been coached and encouraged on how this is done mathematically without the emotion. Once you open up your own business and your own suite, more than likely, if you were super afraid all of those times during the increases, even though you've seen the evidence that it has clearly worked, especially if you've now lowered your prices, are you going to then start to increase your prices ever? Or are you going to go 3 or 5 years where you have the same exact prices across the board, even though your demand is raising? So that's been being done for you in a way, or at least at the minimum with you, and they've been guiding you through that process. So if you now completely throw it out the window, you do that by day one, lowering your prices.
Right, exactly. I hear suite owners say, well, I can do whatever I want.
That's true.
And that's very, very true. And then I also hear them say, when we're talking about price increases or adjustments in prices, oh, I don't know if I want to do that because I don't have anybody to blame. I used to blame the owner that would tell me I had to raise my prices. Now you're a sweet owner. You got to suck it up, Buttercup, and you got to be brave enough to raise your prices when it's warranted, and take ownership of that.
This is really interesting. I've seen so many people move on to suite ownership that had a hugely difficult time selling retail,
Mm.
or a hugely difficult time just understanding numbers or setting goals. I've had people say to me, I'm just terrible with money. I'm really bad with money. It like burns a hole in my pocket. I have an overspending problem. And then lo and behold, the next conversation is that they want to open up their own business. So this past weekend, we were at the Pennsylvania Beauty Expo and we were presenting there. And it was really interesting because Win Clayball was the main speaker the very first day. And he said something around time. And he mentioned how time is accelerated. It's faster now. And he said something really specific. He was like, 12-year-olds know more than we did when we were 23, right? Or whatever age. And when you think about that, you correlate that back to the speed that people feel the need to open up the next thing or open up the suite, or, they have to accelerate where they are. I have young stylists that are like, when am I going to book 1,000 in a day? Or when am I going to book 1,000 to each client? And they haven't even built the full book yet. So a lot of times we're seeing people go into these suites not fully prepared, even clientele wise, to sustain all of the expenses that are coming along with it. And if you're not mature enough to get there, and I don't mean mature in age, I mean mature enough in your thinking process. Have you educated yourself? Have you done enough research? Or are you just doing this to kind of keep up with the Joneses in the industry because you think it's the next thing you should do right now?
Yeah, really great point. I think it's so important to do your due diligence, to really take a look at what you're booking, what you're like. You know yourself. And I got to tell you, I know for a fact everybody shows up better when they're held to accountability. And if you rent a suite, who are you accountable to? You're accountable to yourself. And gosh, if you don't feel like doing it, if you don't have anybody on the books for today, are you really going to go in? Are you really going to go beat the street and try and find someone to book? Or are you going to be like, cool, I got an extra day off, free day off? And so you really have to do your due diligence. You have to know yourself in order to know if this is the right place for you. Not do it because the Jones are doing it, not do it because your best friend has done it, but to do it based on your terms and what you want to accomplish in your career. And I have to really say, you got to think about just what I said. If you don't have anybody, are you going to go in? If you have only one or two people, are you going to call them and try to move them to a day that's more busy? After all, that's when the client wanted and needed to get in. So now, are you going to call them to convenience yourself instead of inconveniencing them? Or do you go there and do you plan your day? Maybe you do your inventory, because yes, you have to do inventory if you carry retail. Even if you don't carry retail, you have to do inventory for your back bar supplies. Are you going to start working on your P&L? Are you going to start doing your social media and do things that suite owners need to do prior to that one client coming in today? Or are you going to be like, not today, I'm just going to call and move that person?
Yeah, let's talk about some of the hidden costs that you might not be aware of prior to going into the business, and even if you're in it, that you might not be paying attention to. So, if you don't have something like QuickBooks or QuickBooks itself, then you're missing a huge component, right? You have to learn QuickBooks to a degree. And if you're not going to learn QuickBooks itself, as far as inputting it, you better hire someone to do that. So, there's a new bookkeeping expense, and your bookkeeper is not your accountant. Right?
Correct.
So now you also have your accountant as well. You're working with vendors, hopefully, to get your color supplies, and maybe not just going to the local store, because you're starting to realize that, wait a minute, if I go to the local store, there's really no reward benefit to that. I'm just purchasing product. Now, a lot of the stores do price match now, where before they might used to be like 10% higher or 12% higher of the same product. Now they'll do price match, but do you realize that you're not earning reward points for that? And those reward points or reward dollars could be very important to purchasing back bar that doesn't actually cost liquid money. So there's another expense possibly. Obviously, you have your rent. There's so many other hidden things. What are you doing for marketing? Are you doing any kind of Google marketing? Are you doing anything that's Facebook or Instagram based ads? All of these things are hidden costs. More than likely, there's probably laundry access that you have in your suite area, so there might not be a huge expense to that. And typically buying towels isn't going to be a huge expense either. But all of your supplies, when we talk about color, what are the other supplies that are kind of constantly recur? Gloves that you're throwing out on a daily basis, foils that you're using on a daily basis, all of those kind of things that add up to huge expenses. What level of education was available at the prior salon that was included in cost? Are you now having to spend for all of that, or have you now decided you don't want to spend that and now you're missing out on education? I mean, there's so many different ways. And listen, you might be saying, well, I didn't receive any of that in my former salon, which is why I opened up my suite, which could be very well and very good and well true, but you still have to implement this dynamic of structure into your business. It's not just you opening up a suite so you can do hair. It's opening up a suite to now run a business also and do hair too. And I think so many people don't fully understand that going in.
Absolutely. Another thing that I think that you really need to think about is the fact that now you are a business owner, you're an LLC most likely, and now clients have access to you 24/7. And when you talk about structure, are you going to have a structure that says your business hours are from this time to this time? My commitment is to get back to you within 24 hours, whatever it is, the next business day, whatever. So oftentimes I see people wanting to respond at 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night, 6 o'clock in the morning. And what the message is to your client is that it's okay to contact you whenever. So now you've put yourself out there 24/7, and people are coming in and going, and they're texting you and they're calling you. And suddenly this work-life balance is totally out of whack. And then you have to untrain them and retrain them the right way by establishing business hours, by establishing some structure within your business. Are you equipped to do that? I don't know.
You mentioned this before too. If there's a difficult conversation that you need to have with a client, if there's any level of boundary that was set prior, like that you had a front desk or you had an owner that would like be that buffer in between,
Mhm.
you don't have that anymore. So there's many times we find suite owners are boundaryless. And that's such a recipe for burnout and for resentment over your business over time, because now you've given your personal cell phone to everybody. So you have no difference between your personal situation in your cell phone and your business. So they're all crossed together. You're getting messages on DMs, you're getting emails from clients, and online booking. So where's the funnel? Are you organizing the funnel of where clients kind of contact through, like Jill said, but then also how you kind of separate yourself and from your business? Is all of the money flowing into your personal account? Is that not separate at all? Do you understand how to pay your quarterly taxes if you're selling retail, and your sales tax? Do you understand that maybe if you had PTO before, that's no longer available to you? Was there a retirement package like I mentioned before, and are you continuing that, or you just completely let it go once you open up your business? So many things here that I think you need to keep in mind either once you're operating or prior to opening.
Yeah, absolutely. And listen, the only person that can tell you if suite ownership is right for you is you. There's not a right or a wrong answer. It's just what's right for you. And what someone else does doesn't matter. It's what's going to work for you. We want you to do your due diligence. We want you to know exactly what you're getting into and if this is going to be a good fit for you. We're completely unattached. We don't have an attachment to whether or not you open up your own suite or you don't. But what we're attached to is that you are set up for a win. So hopefully this helped you and gave you some food for thought on what your next step in your career is. Stay tuned for our next episode.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Culture Curators podcast. Please like, comment, follow, and subscribe.